Welcome to our September edition, and let's hope that it's gotten a little bit cooler, and as it cools there's many things to do in the landscape this time of year. All right, in September we need to mow as needed, raising that height about every 3 weeks so that we're going to finally get up to 2 or 3 inches so that we are putting a root system down that's going to take up the nutrients, store them kind of like a fertilizer. We'll do that last fertilization of the lawn in September, and that's the most important one. A 15-5-10 with sulfur-coated urea is the best that you can use. We can also sow those wildflower seeds, and here's a big long list. Remember, soil contact is the most important thing. So after you put them out, remember that they've got to be raked in, and then don't worry about watering. Mother Nature's going to take care of that with the fall rains. Once again, we can separate those irises and lilies and replant and share, but remember, keep them wet once they're replanted. Now, we can still continue separating the perennials and make sure that you share them with a friend, and if you can't plant right away, you can put them in a container, and then you can take them and give them to a neighbor that lives in, or a relative that lives in a different area. After we get that first soaking rain, you can go ahead and put out your cool season grass like fescue and rye for those areas that you want to maybe keep from tracking mud in during the winter. I discourage overseeding your whole lawn because it's going to deter the grass like Bermuda and St. Augustine from coming out in the spring, and you've got to mow it all winter long, and there's more fertilization involved. But if you have those muddy spots in the lawn that the dogs track stuff in, or you yourself are on your way to the garden, because remember, a winter garden is less work and water, etc. And you get a lot of vegetables that you can't grow at other times of the year. And this is the month that you start them. And in addition, you can sow those seeds of those early spring blooming annuals such as snapdragons, pinks, and pansies. Little tiny seeds, so keep them on the top of the ground. And remember, they'll still need to be shaded if they're in flats, and if they're straight in the ground, just make sure that you mulch just a teeny bit over them and keep them wet. If you're fertilizing your lawn, you're fertilizing your trees because your roots go out extensively, sometimes 3.5 times the height of the tree. And the top 4 to 6, well, let's say 12 inches of soil are where 90% of your roots are. So if you're fertilizing and watering your lawn, you're taking care of your trees. Now we'll want to fertilize the coleus and caladiums, and we'll use ammonium sulfate and use a 1/3 to 1/2 pound per 100 square feet of bed. Remove all dead and diseased wood from your trees, but remember, we're going to hold off just a little bit longer for pruning, that major pruning. In addition, you can continue to disbud the chrysanthemums so that we just have single blooms on them, or a couple of blooms instead of 5 blooms per stalk. And then lightly prune your geraniums and your begonias, and also your salvia, your perennial salvia, and that's going to cause it to bloom again. And then remove dead, weak, and unproductive canes from your roses, and old seed heads from your crepe myrtles. All right, we're going to hand water all those newly planted areas. Remember, after that, soak, don't sprinkle. In addition, plants with green berries and fruit, either in the garden or on your shrubs, because we need those red berries, and we also need the fruit that's producing this time of year. So a continuous moisture flow is important so that they don't drop the fruit that you're growing in your garden and have labored so intensely all summer long for. Or do we want to lose the berries that will feed our animals and birds during the winter seasons? And remember, if you don't water your cucumbers and your eggplant, they're going to become very bitter. And then caladiums and coleus we've mentioned before, but they need plenty of water so that they don't drop their leaves. And then water your lawns as needed, because we may have started getting those fall rains, and if we do, no need to water. If not, 1 inch of water per week is what we need, and soak it down at least 6 inches deep. And once again, we don't want to forget, feed the birds. This time around in our demo, we're going to make a hanging basket. And I want you to start out with a good soil potting mix, and it contains not only perlite, which you see is white, but vermiculite, and you'll see things that look like little eggs in here, and that's actually fertilizer. The basket that we're making today is something that will grow for you year after year. And we're using asparagus fern and airplane plants. Now these can also be planted in your landscape. They freeze back during the winter and come back every year. But in a basket, we don't want to leave them outside. They might freeze. In the ground, they're fine. So if you put them in not a shaded but secluded location during the winter where they're protected from the elements, they're going to make it. Just don't leave them hanging in a tree. And the reason that they do so well in this area is that they have this globular root system. And right here, we can see one nodule. Right here. But if you'll look at these airplane plants, root system, you can tell that they've got the same root system and is ready to be repotted. Now we're going to put the airplane plants in the middle because they're going to stay more upright than the asparagus fern. You think it doesn't have a saucer in it or drainage holes. Make sure that they all have drainage holes. So I'm going to take a little bit of soil out, and then I'm going to place all the plant material in here, and then we'll cover it up. So remember, we talked about one airplane plant in the middle, and then we're going to put asparagus fern on the side, and we'll use 3. Once again, you can see how alike their root systems are. Evenly space them, and then we want to make sure that they're all on here about the same height, and that we have a lip on the basket so you can see they're in. And then we put the soil in. You want to settle it in. There's no need to pound it in. And now, you'll take it in and you'll water it. And as you water these, make sure that you kind of comb the foliage down. Eventually these fronds are going to get so long they'll hang down. Now this is why it's called an airplane plant, because they produce these little babies. And then because these were all grown in a flat together, you can see that they shot them straight up. But as soon as they get the room, they hang down. And so we'll have these hanging over, and they'll come down and make like 3 tiers. I have one at home that's this big around. I can't even reach around it. And people stop and ask me, you know, where did I buy it? I went, it's about 15 years old. So you see, you can keep them and they'll grow bigger and bigger. All you have to do is repot them and make sure that they're getting water and nutrients. But with this globular root system, you're not going to be watering every day in the heat of the summer. So as you know, in August it's been hot, but still we can keep growing. So grow on.